I know, it's horrible. So let's pretend that you had, say, a small tiny human that you would like to save for college for. Let's go back in time and pretend we're your parents.
Yeah,
and pretend that they wanted to save money for you.
Okay.
Like because they loved you or something.
My parents
and had extra money.
Or just even planned for me.
My parents
Didn't even plan. There's so much resentment back there. Or planned for me.
They do pretend like they want to save money.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's feel bad now.
Oh. You hit
All
some
right.
nerves, Joe. Hit some nerves.
So, let's start with, let's make this problem realistic. You have an extra $10 per month to put into a savings account for your adorable tiny human.
You did not write it.
Do not write
You did
adorable.
not write it.
Adorable.
Adorable?
Nope, that's not D.
That's a B.
That's aborable.
Abortable. And that's almost adorable. Which is like
Adorable.
really,
That's-
really.
I like
Screw it, tiny
I like
humans
it better.
aren't adorable anyway.
They're adorable.
I think
Okay.
they are.
Pretend you have $10 a month to put into a savings account for your tiny human.
You have a tiny human.
Why are you hiding tiny humans from us, Joe?
It's still an option in America. For now.
He hides me.
Oh, that's his building his climbing wall.
Tiny humans now zero.
Tiny humans are back to building his climbing wall.
Tiny humans now organic.
Okay, you guys are derailing my example.
Okay.
Tiny humans now 0,
Ouch.
right? You probably don't have $10 the first month, but whatever. Let's assume you did.
Is that the age of our tiny human?
Yeah.
Tiny human is aged 0.
Not a set. Not a
It
set
is
with
0
nothing in it.
months.
Not a set with nothing in it. Okay, 0 months.
0 months, so it's 3 days.
Yeah, I didn't. Okay.
You distracted.
Let's assume you have a decent savings account that gets 4% interest, where you put it in some kind of mutual fund. None of you have a savings account that gets 4% interest. God knows I don't.
So you have to have a lot of money to get those kind of savings
Yeah.
accounts. In which case you don't really need.
In which case, $10 a month is not the amount you're putting in. Okay.
Unless you're just really a stupid idiot.
You can get a mutual fund that gets 4% pretty easily. That's a reasonable thing. So let's pretend you're putting this somewhere where you get 4% interest yearly, right?
Which means that you get 4% more.
And you have $10 a month, which it doesn't quite mean you get 4% more a month.
Is it a year? Or what is
That's
it?
4% more a year,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
You guys see that?
Yeah. Yearly interest rate.
Okay, so let's just assume that compounds yearly to make my life easier. Okay, the compounding yearly is a thing that I'm doing to make my life easier. If you want to know how this works in all cases, you'll want to take a finite math class or something, or an accounting class. So, first things first, in the first year, how much money have I put in the account?
$120.
$120?
Yeah.
Okay. First year. Right? How much money have I put in the second year?
Well, not including interest.
Yeah, so let's leave that aside. How much money are you going to put in the second year?
$120 more dollars.
Also $120. Also $120 in the third year, right? Right? This is not super complicated. When is this going to stop?
When the tiny human is no longer tiny?
Yeah, when the tiny human is no longer tiny and when the tiny human wants to go to college,
Maybe like
right?
18.
So let's answer the question, how much will this be worth when TH is 18?
So 120 after 18.
You guys see that that's kind of the reasonable question here?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have $120 from the first year, $120 from the second year, $120 from the third year, and so on, right? Okay, so a ways over here, I'm going to get 18th year,
So then you go 18.
right?
120.
And there's going to be $120 there. You guys see this?
Wait, wouldn't
That-
it be the 17th year? Because as soon as the tiny human turns 18, then you're no longer putting money in?
Well,
Totally. You guys see that?
No, I mean, 18
So,
would work. 'cause
this
that's
is
the
your
last time
Your
that-
18th
but-
First year's contribution, right? So this one goes with TH
because-
is 1.
Because you're not counting 0.
No, this is a
You're
reasonable
zero.
question,
You're
right? I'm
zero.
just trying to tease out the answer. So the tiny human was 0 when I started, right? And there was no money in the account, right?
A year passed.
After the first.
After the first year, right, this is when the tiny human turns 1.
Oh, okay.
So that's a good question to worry about, though. Like, this is really the hardest part of this, is figuring out how many steps were there. You guys see that? So on this one, I started, the tiny human turned 1, and I had $120 accumulated. Then the tiny human turns 2, and I have $120 plus interest plus $120. You guys see that? Then the tiny human turns 3, I have $120 plus $120 with, ooh, this is where things get weird, right?
Compounded interest.
You guys see that? Because this $120,
Just now, less than
It's 240. Yeah, it's like 4%, 240.
okay, so maybe over here, let me write this thought out because I think I'm confusing everyone by just pointing. So, first year, right? Oops, sorry. Let's use TH is 1. Right? Tiny human is 1. $120. How much interest have you accumulated? None. Because it hasn't compounded yet, right? It'll compound the day after tiny human turns 1. So, tiny human turns 2, I have $120 plus
The compounded. 4% interest.
the $120 that I put in the first year with 4% interest on top. So that's 1, okay. So that's 120 times 1.04. You guys see that? Then the next year, tiny human turns 3. I got $120 plus,
All of the rest of it from 1.04, except for the 1.04.
yeah, so this is my new $120.
So that's your
And then I had the first $120, that's this one, with 4% interest on it twice.
So 8%.
And then I also have this guy with 4% interest on it. Careful with the.
Yes, I'm not just saying that, I just swear.
So what did you say loudly?
What I said was 8% interest, but that was wrong.
Yeah, you look at this and you say to yourself, that's 4% interest twice, right? That's 8%.
It's actually 4%.
Except it's not. It's a
4%.
little bit.
I would say that it's 4% of 104%. Or not 4%, 104% of 100%.
It's a little bit better.
Don't you take the 4% of the entire second year?
Yeah, so you can think about this, right? This thing here is really that thing there times, and I distributed it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, see that? So in the tiny human is 4 year, you're going to have the $120 you just put in, right?
Times that.
And then you're going to have all the stuff from the previous year times 4%. Right? So you're going to have the new money from the third year, and then the money from the second year with 2 interests on it, and then the first year's money with 3 now.
Makes sense.
You guys see that? Kind of with me? Okay, so in the tiny human equals 18 year, you're going to have $120 that you just put in this year, right? And $120 with 4% interest on it that you put in. When did this money appear? Yeah, that was the last year's money, right? The 17th. And then you're going to have 120 with 1.04 squared. That's the year before. And on down the road here. And at the very end, you're going to have 120 and 1.04 to the
17.
17.
Is there a way to condense that so you can put it in the calculator, or do you just have to?
Totally. There's exactly a way to condense that so you can put it in the calculator. And it's the trick I showed you a minute ago.
Yeah, so the S and then.
So look, this is a finite sum, right? So this is like your S.
So N equals
Your,
7.
just call your S equal to that, right? And then instead of trying to figure out how the formula works, you could. You guys want to figure out how the formula works?
Okay,
Okay, fine. Let's figure out how the formula works. So the formula I gave you before, right,
S is N equals
was Sn is A1 minus R to the n plus 1 over 1 minus R. And that worked when I had A plus AR plus AR squared, and so on out to AR to the n. So now you guys need to tell me what A is, what R is, and what n
Okay,
is.
A is 120.
Okay, that one seems pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, R is 1.04.
And R is 1.04,
And 17.
and n is
8. Oh.
7.
I see.
Okay, so that, and that's what I was telling. That's what I was saying. Mika's got a good point, right? You have to be really careful with whether you do 17 or 16 or 18, right? Because those all feel pretty similar.
This is your first turn, last turn.
And it might be pretty easy to go, okay, so tiny human's 18. That means I should have an 18 power out there, right? But you're not going to have it out there. It's going to be in the formula. Just cool that? So when you crank on this, if you use the formula, you get S is 120 times 1 minus
1.04 to the power
1.04 raised to the 18th
18
over
over
0.04. Close.
negative.
Negative 0.04. Somebody want to crank that in the calculator for me?
Punch it through like an MMA. 3,077.
Okay, quick. Let's ballpark our answer. What's the smallest amount of money that you could accumulate by putting $10 in an account every month for 18 years?
No interest.
No interest, right? It'd be,
120
so it should be at least 12 times 18 times 10, right? You guys see that?
Yes.
Which is how much money?
2,160.
And instead I have
3,077.
3,077.
If I type in
Yeah.
You guys cool with that? So how much did I make off the interest? So from here to there?
less than 1,000.
Less than $1,000, but that's like a 30% increase, right?
Pretty cool.
You guys see that? Yeah, and hopefully your tiny human's going to Columbia, but $10 a month isn't a big stretch, right? Like $10 a month you guys spend on lunch and a latte, right? Coffee, avocado toast. Avocado toast is twice this much.
Do you think anywhere in Sonora sells avocado toast?
Yeah,
Yes.
Starbucks does.
Okay, that isn't Starbucks.
Yeah, tons of places in Sonora do. The
Okay.
Lighthouse Cafe.
Anyway, point is, right? This is actually a pretty good bang for your buck, right?
Yeah.
So, why did this get to be so much money?
Exponents.
Because exponents are freaking awesome,
Yeah.
right? That said, this is the same reason that you don't take out a 6-year car loan instead of a 5-year car loan.
Oh, okay.
Because exponents, right? Exponents are great when they're making you money, and they suck when they're not. Right? So, shorter terms, good idea.
Yeah, that's what
Especially on car loans.